Um, so obviously, first up on the list. Actually, let me do my job here. So I'm Josh Cujo. Most of you guys who are in here know me. In fact, I think all of you guys know me. We got Dan, we got Alex, and we've got Dave. And I apologize if I'm pointing in random places because on my screen that's where they're at.
Yeah, they'll be in different
So,
spots probably for other people.
woo! So, um, so first off, this week, the FAA has released two draft advisory circulars. One relating to performance-based navigation operations for us, not the immediate concern, although we will be diving into that a little bit. But more so, the advisory circular 91-57C, which is for the exception for limited recreational operations of unmanned aircraft. And this covers two things. Actually, kind of three things. It covers persons flying unmanned aircraft without specific certification. It also covers people using unmanned aircraft systems for educational purposes, as well as persons or organizations requesting recognition as a community-based organization. Um, the people seeking establishment of fixed recreational flying sites as part of that CBO process, and people organizing unmanned aircraft only sanctioned events.
And I also
So
just, yeah, want to jump in real quick and say that
Mhm.
this is making their previous advisory circular obsolete. So, gosh, when was that? Is that in 2019 or 2020 when they released the previous advisory circular about recreational flights, talking about how you're supposed to follow the guidelines of a CBO, even though they don't exist yet, and sort of gave a little bit more clarification on the rules, like the 400 feet rule and all that stuff. So that's going away, being replaced by this, and basically it's taking what that used to be and just adding a little bit more to it.
Yeah, and I mean, for the first parts, there's nothing new in terms of any new rules or regulations on operating recreationally, from what I can see. Nothing, game changing there. The parts that we have been waiting for are obviously the process to request recognition as a CBO,
Any
and
chance you
even
can zoom in a little bit on your fonts there?
yeah, sure, I can do that.
Yeah, the CBO stuff is certainly something we've been waiting for.
So let me zoom this in as well. I will.
Yes, you have to fly for fun, and if you're not having fun, you need a Part 107. That should be in there. That's
It
pretty
is
much
in
what
there.
they mean.
So again, it's got the normal legalese, like the purpose, the audience, where you can find it, the background information, the definition of limited recreational unmanned aircraft operations, um, all that good stuff. So within that, and I'm gonna scroll quickly through here. Um, the so you've got right here. This is the criteria for being a recreational flyer. Nothing new here. Person using a UAS for any other purpose than recreational must operate the UAS under applicable FAA regulations, either Part 107 or Part 91. Recreational purpose includes operated by an institution of higher education for educational or research purposes. And that includes instruction of students, academic or research related uses, activities undertaken by an institution as part of research projects, including projects sponsored by the Fed, um, or other academic activities approved by the institution. Um, and then also UAS flown as part of an established junior ROTC Corp training program, or UAS flown as part of educational program that is chartered by a CBO. Um, so the significant portion here is going to be the aircraft, and this has been in the rules for a long time, but since they haven't defined how to become a CBO, this has been one of those things where the FAA has said, okay, we're going to put this particular rule aside. It's not relevant until we define CBOs. So this is stating that same rule that the aircraft is operated in accordance within the programming of a community based organization set of safety guidelines that are developed in coordination with the FAA. Let's see. Recreational flyers should be able to explain to the FAA inspector or law enforcement officer which CBO safety guidelines they are following. And this has always been the thing that you are not required to be a member of a CBO to fly under its safety guidelines. So as long as you are utilizing, one of those recognized CBOs set of safety guidelines, you are fine. You don't have to be a card carrying member. Assuming that we get recognized, you wouldn't need to be a member of the FPVFC or the AMA or any other recognized CBO. You just need to fly by one of their sets of rules. Um, Obviously, the aircraft is flown within the visual line of sight of the person operating the aircraft or a visual observer co-located in direct communication with the operator. So again, nothing new here. However, there are some new parts in specific relation to FPV that I don't remember seeing in the original sections. And it's been a while since I've looked at those sections, but they do define what an FPV device is, which I kind of take a little bit of an issue with in terms of how they explain it here. Um,
Or how about these FPV devices often provide a restricted view of the surrounding area? Well,
Absolutely. That's the part I
I
take issue with. Not only that, but FPV devices aren't necessarily goggles. They can be a screen, and there are
yeah,
a lot of people who still fly by screen, and that's perfectly okay.
I would like
Um,
to point out, if I'm going to make my own comments eventually, and say that that sentence at the end serves no purpose. It doesn't help this
Absolutely.
document in any way. And
yep.
Yeah.
if it stays there, then where's the source? Where's the justification of this line?
Where's the
I,
risk analysis? So on and
I,
so forth. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's. I agree. It's gratuitous and not substantiated.
Yes.
Agreed, Dan.
So obviously, we all take issue with that, and it also says that the recreational flyer uses the assistance of a visual observer for the operation. The visual observer must be co-located, which means the visual observer must be standing close enough to the recreational flyer to be able to communicate directly with him or her without the use of technological assistance and without creating a distraction to the recreational flyer. So this right here kind of expands on the role of a visual observer versus anything we've seen to date. So co-located, yes, we've always kind of said that that should be fairly close. It can't be, you can't be using walkie-talkies or a cell phone to communicate with one another, but it doesn't necessarily say that you can't be, 50 feet in an opposite direction. Now, I know I'm, kind of picking this apart a little bit, but at the same time it does say that you do need to be able to the actual operator would need to be able to um, remove their FPV glass or FPV goggles and to be able to see the drone themselves as well. But up above, and I apologize for skipping this part, it does say the recreational flyer or visual observer must be able to see the unmanned aircraft with vision unaided by any device other than corrective lenses throughout the entire flight to ensure it does not present a collision hazard to other manned or unmanned aircraft. The use of a visual observer is optional, but it enables the recreational flyer to check instruments for extended periods.
I
There
find it
was a point.
interesting that they don't talk about like safety of bystanders or anything. They only mention in that paragraph a
Mhm.
collision hazard to other manned or unmanned aircraft.
Now there is a section, and it might be lower when it talks about the safety rules, where they talk about being able to utilize a set of binoculars for momentary sighting of the aircraft, which was kind of interesting to me.
That's
Uh,
similar in 107 as well.
yeah. So it does discuss airspace to some of the folks who are posting in the Discord at the moment,
And
covering
right down
class.
on the screen under 2.2.4, The sentence, let's see, it's one second sentence that ends the position of the aircraft in relation to other aircraft. I need to check to see if that's a new phrase, because that's suggesting that the remote pilot in command is responsible for detect and avoid. And I know that's implicit, but the position of all, it says all aircraft, all times. I think this is one that I'd like to complain about and get it toned down a little.
Have fun
I like
at
the
those big
launch and
flight.
re-entry vehicles.
Yeah. Have fun at like those big flight fest kind of things where you've got 100 airplanes all flying at once. So you've got a visual observer who's keeping track of all of those at all times.
All aircraft at all times. Yeah.
Must carry mini radars with us at all times now, right? I hesitate to say that out loud. I'm sorry if that becomes a reality. It's not my fault.
Someone from SpaceX snuck in there and put that launch and recovery vehicles in there. Must have been.
Right. So it does cover airspace here. So in class B, C, D airspace with the lateral boundaries of the surface, yada yada yada. Basically need to get your prior authorization through Lance, and if you're flying around airspace that does not have Lance, it does clarify now that you will need to put in a request via drone zone at least 90 days prior to the proposed flight so that they can review it.
Yeah, along those
still
lines.
have that 90 days.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Which is ridiculous.
In section 2.2. In section 2.2.5.2, the let's see, second sentence, Lance provides automated near real-time authorization for flight requests in most controlled airspace. I think that's wrong. I think we've got about 700 airports to date, so that's something I needed to look into.
Guys, go over that again, because I just had to send a letter to Whidbey Island Naval Wear Station rejecting a permanent flying site here, and we don't have Lance, so I would have to call Whidbey Island or do a 90-day. No, would you go over that again, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. So it says right here, first off, it says recreational flyers should not contact ATC facilities to obtain airspace authorizations to fly in controlled airspace. If they want to fly, if the recreational flyer wants to fly near airports in B, C, or D airspace or within the lateral boundaries of a surface area of Class E airspace that are not serviced by Lance, the recreational flyer should use the FAA Drone Zone website, which is at faadronezone.faa.gov, to request an airspace authorization. The recreational flyer should submit the request at least 90 days prior to the proposed flight to allow the FAA time to review the airspace and the justification for the flight.
So I put in for an airspace authorization via Part 107. I don't remember if I did it 90 days prior, but it was probably close to that. And I mean, it works. The process works, but it definitely took them a few weeks to come back to me and give me they gave me a COA, actually, technically, and it was in Class D airspace at it was in Oceana Naval Air Station, Class Delta airspace. So yeah, it works, but yeah.
I'd feel really bad for anybody who doesn't have Lance in their area. Like, if my airport, which I'm like 6 miles away from, just on the edge of the actual controlled airspace, I wouldn't be able to fly in my backyard without like planning ahead 90 days, which would be crazy.
And that 90 days is at least, which means it can take longer.
Yes.
And
and
it's annoying at those.
We should at this point in time we should have moved well beyond this, and
we should be a minute. That's what we get with Lance. It should be a minute for both of them.
I can understand, like, even maybe not a minute, but an hour. It shouldn't be that difficult. I mean, how many people are submitting requests like this that can't submit through Lance? It should not be that involved of a process. So, yeah, it's still something that needs to be worked on. Now, I will, congratulate the FAA on the development of the Lance system and being able to get real-time authorizations. That's fantastic. But They really should be incentivizing more places to get on board with this quicker, and it needs to roll out fairly quickly.
Yeah, for the places that have it, it seems to work great, except for that couple of days when it was totally down.
Yeah, when it first when we were transitioning to. All right, so it says recreational flyers may choose to fly at fixed recreational flying sites, not me, which are locations with standing airspace authorizations for recreational flying. Fixed recreational flying sites are posted on the FAA's UAS data delivery system. And there's more on that a little bit later. I'm trying to skim over this quickly because I have a lot to go through in relation to some other stuff, but I'm if you need me to stop or slow down at a part, please don't hesitate to ask.
Well, we should just note that the fixed flying area is the current term and not a FRIA.
Absolutely.
So it's likely that these fixed sites will have to reapply to become FRIAs.
Yes. And that will be through the CBO process, which is touched on later on down in the bottom of this document. So obviously in here, we've got the Aeronautical Knowledge and Safety Test, also known as the Recreational UAS Safety Test, or just Trust. We're not going to call it the Trust because the Trust would be redundant. And let's see, registered and marked with the registration number, so on and so forth. So getting into the community-based organizations. So to recap up here, nothing has really changed a whole lot up in this upper section. There is some additional wording on some things that we will follow up on. There's some wording obviously we don't like, and we don't want to be a part of this, so we will be commenting on that.
Well, and it says right at the top that they can't make any like new laws or anything in this document. It's just to clarify what exists.
Correct, and we want that clarification to be accurate. So we'll be hammering that point home. And even further so, we will be putting our recommendations, obviously, out there for you guys, so you can utilize them as we have done in the past with NPRM and just about everything else that we've been involved with in terms of NPRMs and final rules and all that good stuff, so that can be utilized as a cohesive
and that's an important point, Josh. I'm sure you would have touched, the submission of comments is different than the NPRM process. They want us to fill out a form and email that form to one of the FAA individuals, and of course we'll do that, but that prevents public posting. So we, as you said, we'll post our comments so that folks here can see them.
Yep, and utilize them to their effect as well. So again, we want to provide a cohesive front on stuff like this so that we can make an impact. It worked in the past, and we want to continue that theme. So CBO. So nothing here is a surprise at this top section. This is everything that was in the FAA Reauthorization Act. Yes. So you need to be a 501c3, which we are. You need to be tax exempt under 501a. I do believe we are. Mission which is demonstrably the furtherance of model aviation. I think we've proven that fact time and time again. Provides a comprehensive set of safety guidelines. Now, we do have that. Now, they really hammer home some major points on the safety guidelines, and we as an organization will probably have to go back and refine some of our safety guidelines to coincide with this.
Expanding on that, not to derail this whole thing, but it's a small concern of mine that the FAA could use this to insert any rules they want changed, because every recreational flyer has to fly under the rules of a CBO. And if they only authorize CBOs who state XYZ in their safety guidelines, they can now force any rule they want without having to go through any red tape to do it.
Well, I would say, from my point of view, there are recommendations in here that they want to see in those safety guidelines, but we as an organization will need to tailor those to be as operator friendly as humanly possible.
Yeah, but I'm just saying behind the
So-
scenes, the FAA could just say, you're not meeting the safety guidelines we want to see. You're not a CBO. And they only approve the
And that's a
CBOs that list the
possibility.
ones that say what the FAA wants them to say.
Yeah.
And they
And-
kind of hint at that, saying, "Well, we recommend you say these things, even though we don't specifically say you have to. We're recommending you do."
And I will say that most of this document is based on what those safety guidelines should be. So it's pretty interesting. So again, I haven't delved massively deep into what those safety guidelines are, because the eyes glaze over fairly quickly on stuff like that. But I have kind of perused them. So
anyway, we can move on to
obviously-
the next one there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it provides programming and support for any local charter organizations, affiliates, and clubs, and provides assistance and support in the development and operation of locally designated model aircraft flying sites. It does state in here that we are not that a CBO is not required to have designated model aircraft flying sites, but it is a possibility for them to apply.
I think what that's trying to say, and it clarifies a little bit later, that since CBOs are the only things that can request like a FRIA, a CBO has to have the ability and willingness to apply for FRIAs on behalf of its members.
Absolutely. All right, so it goes through how to submit for them, and they'll maintain a list of them, and they talk about the use of UAS for educational purposes in relation to a CBO.
Yeah, and I think that they just decided the easy out for them for educational, not to make separate rules, but just let's pretend educational use is a recreational use and shoehorn them into the rules.
Yeah. Let's see, safety guidelines. So pretty much from here on down, including regulatory, first person view. Oh, we'll cover the first person view procedures because that's important. But all these are safety guidelines that they would like to see, including procedures for night flying, medical condition, illness, medication, stress, alcohol, fatigue, and emotion. So apparently don't fly when you are upset. Which I would argue against to a certain extent as
yeah, lots of people use flying to
a release
to fix their emotional state as a medication, as a stress reliever, except if you crash.
Let's see, and obviously reporting procedures. So let's see.
Yeah, the reporting
procedures. I thought that was only 107.
No.
They're only had to do that under 107.
They're suggesting that a CBO ask its members to report every time your drone crashes, gets damaged, causes property damage over $500. There's a recreational flyer error. So every time I miscalculated, I hit a tree, you should send in a report.
Well, here's the two
and
sides
that's what
to
it's
this.
saying.
Right.
Loss of navigation function every time you have a failsafe.
Well, here's the thing that I would say about this is, the CBO can request this, but as a CBO, if as a potential CBO, my recommendation, obviously this is something we would need as an organization to talk about, instead of saying, hey, report your issues to us so that we can then forward it up. Well, NASA has this great anonymous tool that we talked about a couple episodes ago that you can utilize with doesn't retain your personal data. It is impossible for them to use to enforce anything, and utilize that to report if you're gonna report. So again, that would be my original thought when I was reading this. I was like, let's just use an anonymous tool. So at any rate, let's go back up real quick and I will cover the FPV stuff because this is where some of the interesting stuff is. And this is the first time we've seen first person view procedures specifically called out. So If a CBO supports FPV flying, comprehensive safety guidelines should include at least the following minimum guidance for operating UAS under FPV. These suggested guidelines are provided as examples to assist CBOs. CBOs should tailor the guidelines to fit their particular needs. FPV flyers should be proficient in flying their unmanned aircraft without an FPV device prior to starting FPV flights. I will be the first one to sit here and say that, could I land it? Probably. Am I going to be, flying it in the same fashion that I fly FPV? Absolutely not.
I would say, going back to our argument that FPV can enhance situational awareness, if it's far out there, I can still have line of sight, but my situational awareness isn't great. I'm way better off just hitting the failsafe and telling it to drop to the ground than I am to try to fly it back and potentially hit something else. If I've got problems.
So going back, and I would agree with that completely. FPV flyers should perform pre-flight inspections of the FPV device's video control, power source, mechanical systems before each flight. I don't think that's an issue. That's pretty normal. Obviously, we're doing a lot of work on the bench to make sure our stuff works. FPV operations require someone to be watching the unmanned aircraft at all times to ensure safe operation. This requires the use of a visual observer. Now, this is the part where that's interesting. Visual observers must be co-located with the FPV flyer and maintain visual line of sight with the aircraft at all times. Same as above. Visual observation of the aircraft must be made with unaided vision, except in the case of vision that is corrected by the use of eyeglasses or contact lenses. Vision aids such as binoculars may be used only momentarily to enhance situational awareness. Visual observers must be in direct communication with the FPV flyer. So that's the first time we've been able to utilize vision aids, even just for short bursts of time. So
I don't quite understand the use case and why it's so important that it's in this document, but okay.
I don't either, but FPV flyers must have the capacity to see the aircraft at all times. This is you as the operator, not you as the visual observer. Although a visual observer may be watching the UA, the FPV flyer must ensure that throughout the operation of the UA, he or she would have the ability to immediately see the unmanned aircraft that the FPV device was removed. So I understand the meaning behind this, but it's going to take me way longer to find it in the air if I take my goggles off. I mean,
your visual observer should be able to point you to it super fast, right?
It's going to have to be really quick. Just saying.
I mean, if they're thinking, oh, I've got a Mavic flyer and it's just hovering out there a couple hundred yards away, can you show me where it is? Fine. If you're flying 85 miles an hour, you got no chance.
No, not at all. It's just I think by the time you acquire visual, it's going to be too late in one form or another. But at the same time, I understand where they're coming from.
To XJet's question, you'll be blinded by the light when you take your goggles off. That's why we're all supposed to wear an eye patch like a pirate, so we're only looking through one eye.
3 statute miles of strobes. This is where I'm sure we'll spend some time commenting on these because these get a little dopey.
Yeah, they do. Apparently, we're not allowed to use FPV systems now when the weight of the unmanned aircraft exceeds 55 pounds. That's new.
Yeah, I don't understand where that's coming from.
Well, that's the definition of a small UAS in the regs. 44809 specifies between greater than 250 grams, less or greater than 0.55 pounds, less than 55 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Still interesting though that I guess you have to go under special review anyway for anything over that, but still I don't see why it should lock you out of FPV.
Yeah.
So and then I'm not going to dive into these safety guidelines. Feel free to read them. There's a couple other things I do want to cover.
Going back to that 55-pound thing, like to me that's just reinforcing their idea that FPV is unsafe. So don't put it on things that are even bigger because that makes it even more unsafe.
Yeah, so, I 100% don't agree with that, obviously. But
yeah, I think if we look in the operations over people and in the categories, we'll see the same weight clips. And and then if we go way back in early 2019, they used these weights and then they converted them to, if it drops out of the sky, how much energy what's the kinetic energy, and etc. I think that's what they're trying to foreshadow for us in this.
Absolutely. So there's some interesting safety guidelines. Some of the ones that kind of pop out at me. Maintenance of the UAS and its components should be conducted in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. So 90% of us were the manufacturer.
Write your own instructions.
Instructions. No maintenance.
And that
I'm just being
actually,
snarky at this
When
point.
broken.
well, that kind of gets into that
It's
next
when
one
broken.
about,
Maintenance schedule.
yeah, about checking for updates. Like, you might want to write your manual to say, don't update Betaflight because new versions might break it, which goes against what their recommendation says there.
Yeah.
So-
Or some pilots like the older versions of Betaflight. They like how it flies better.
Yeah, the manual should really say, if it's working, don't fix it. Don't touch it. Don't update it.
And XJet is lamenting about his servo failures on his FPV quad.
Yeah, and he also mentions like the firmware updates for the V2 DJI goggles have made them worse and less safe. Obviously, if you're using something that's got security vulnerabilities and you should be updating it, that's a different story. But yeah,
Interesting.
Just blindly saying to make sure you're on the latest version of software isn't always the right way to go.
All right. So the last thing I'm going to second to last thing, I apologize, that I'm going to call out on here are the procedures for night flights. So as you know, if you're flying under recreational rules, you are allowed to fly at night. With technically at this point without lights that are visible for the 3 statute miles. But they are recommending that in the safety guidelines for recreational that we put in the safety guidelines that that we require members to fly with lights that can be seen from 3 statute miles away.
Make sure you put that on your tiny whip.
Right. So, I mean, there you go. I don't understand how you can not have it as part of the rules. It's completely allowed, and then all of a sudden, you gotta.
And that's why I'm kind of pointing out that the FAA can use the CBO to push some new regulations. Like, well, if you don't have that in your safety guidelines, you're not going to be a CBO. And therefore, there's a new regulation basically in effect.
And again, it could come down to, wording of this. FPVFC recommends that you utilize LEDs.
And it does say, talks about down in there about flying in areas that are sufficiently illuminated so you can see and maintain visual line of sight. And a lot of people fly at night around parking lots, and you've got little LEDs, and you can see the drone just fine.
So the last little bit that I'm going to kind of call out, this is airspace authorizations for sanctioned events. If a planned UAS only event will occur in BCD or E2 airspace or in uncontrolled airspace above 400 feet, the organizer of the event must request an authorization for the time and place of the event. Requesters should submit all of the site-specific information in a paragraph and the dates at least 90 days in advance of the event for authorization. UAS only aviation events conducted under the exceptions, such as drone races or aerobatic displays, must adhere to CBO safety guidelines developed in coordination with the FAA or approved by the FAA. And that's specifically in cases of weighing more than 55 pounds. Guidelines for any public display, that's in case of operations. It says guidelines.
I think there's an or statement in that 55 pounds. So I think this is for all races. So we
approved.
We need to add, some racing guidelines up and what's sensible, so that we can make sure that that's covered here.
Guidelines for any public display of unmanned aircraft flying should include procedures to protect non-participants from all unmanned aircraft participating in the event and should identify persons responsible, such as a safety officer and a contest director, for ensuring the safety of the operations conducted on site. So this appears to be a way to set up the beginnings of an attempt to set up like temporary fixed flying sites for race events, that kind of stuff. So this is a step in the right direction. I feel like it needs to be, probably a little less involved, as we stated above. This needs to be a quicker process than 90 days. Um, but at the same time, if this is, if you're flying in B, C, D, or E2, if you're flying in G airspace, you have a race event in G airspace, you're fine. You don't need to contact them. You're completely fine. Or if you're flying below 400 feet, which I would hazard to guess that 100% of all races happen under 400 feet, with the exception of maybe a very specialized race where, something would need to happen way up high. But,
that's a heck of a dive tower.
Skyscraper.
Yeah, or, we got
gates on the side of
a hot air balloon with a gate hanging underneath it or something.
Yeah, someone was playing those DRL levels in on their sim and wanted to make some regulations against them.
Yeah, the AMA was nervous about this for turbine events and sailplane events.
Mm-hmm. But for FPV racing, absolutely makes no sense. So again, at this point, if you're flying in G airspace, you're perfectly fine. But if the funny thing is if you're flying in any of these other airspaces, you can't use Lance to set up an event, which doesn't make sense to me. That's the problem I see here. I mean, any flight, whether it's one person, 20 people, should be the same thing. It shouldn't need any special, type of license. If it's approved by Lance, it should be fine. So,
right. And
tossing it out there.
TextJet 454 is making the point, gosh, it sounds like if we follow these rules, we're all going to be flying illegally. And I don't think so, particularly to just what Josh says. If it's uncontrolled airspace, not a lot of difference from what we do today. And if it is controlled airspace, then they're just reiterating existing rules about gaining flight approval, and that the 90 days out is very difficult.
Yeah, I think TextJet was talking more about visual observers and some of the extra rules they're pushing about safety and flying at night and stuff.
So I don't have that ability to fly at night or to call Lance, and I sure the hell am not going to wait 90 days when I got a 5 or 10 minute window when the wind isn't blowing in the Pacific Northwest.
Or not raining in the Northeast. It wasn't raining today for 10 minutes, so I got out and flew.
I can't even call that's ridiculous. There's no definition for this.
So again, we will be, commenting on a lot of the safety regulations, the stuff that we, have a bit of a disagreement with. I feel like, we'll be putting that out there. We will get that out there in enough time for you guys to submit your comments, so that you kind of have a guide to go off, an outline to go off of, in order to, fabricate your comments. So, some of this stuff is not a surprise. Some of this stuff is a step in the right direction. Some of it's a step in the wrong direction. A lot of what we see from the FAA fits this bill. Nothing new. It's fine, or we need to talk. It's that kind of issue. So we will release those comments. We will talk about this internally, and we'll get something definite. So just be on the lookout for that.
On one hand, it's great that the FAA has in their mind enough. They're thinking about FPV enough to put it in this document. It's a bummer that they put it in such a way that we're not happy with it, but it's at least something they're thinking about a lot.
One step forward, 2 steps back.
Are they going to force airports to install LATs so it's fair and equitable to us, or are we going to have to file a lawsuit against discrimination against FPV flyers?
Well, again, I think Lance has been a system from... No, I know. I think Lance from the beginning has been a system that they've been rolling out a segment at a time. And I think we're at the point now that it should be reaching critical mass as opposed to, kind of limping along. So
they can't expect us to use Lance unless they got it in place. Otherwise, we're at 90 days.
Yeah, which is untenable. And I think that's kind of the position that we'll be taking with them. So,
and XJet, we're doing our best to try to be the FAA's resource and letting them know when they're making goobers when they're not correct on how FPV works.
Yeah. So, at any rate, I didn't mean to take up the whole time on this, but it is kind of a big topic, so I'm not upset about it.
Yeah, did other people read it and have questions? Things they wanted to bring up or talk about?
Yeah. Before I step on to something else. Remind them that bad regulations are seldom complied with, so serve no purpose in modifying behaviors. I agree.
And we've also really been trying to drive home the one size regulation does not fit everyone.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So the timing on this, I think, is comments in by August 9. Is that correct?
That sounds right.
I think so. Yes.
And so our objective is to beat that by a couple of weeks, so that give folks an opportunity to see what we've done and put in their own comments. Yep, August 9.
Yeah, I don't know if that gave us exactly 30 days, or it probably was. Even though we did they release it like secretly on a Friday and no one noticed about it until.
We can deliver them by hand, so that means we can walk up and hand a printed piece of paper to them.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so
to DC. I might have to go make a trip.
Go demand to see Emily Rogers and hand them over personally.
Hand them the comments.
So our way of working is our comments will be productive, professional, and polite.
Yep, absolutely.
But can I at least deliver them in person since I'm right here?
Whatever floats your boat, Alex. Oh my goodness.
Put a piece of candy with it or something too, so it's extra nice comments.
All right, so I'm gonna skip through a couple of these other news articles really quickly. I might save some of these for our next trip through. I don't want to hold anything up too much. The Drive has created, I think, in collaboration with the Warzone, they have created a map with over 100,000 incident reports that have been reported to the FAA regarding drones or unidentified aircraft. So we've explored this database before. You can go through it in an Excel document. You can read it. The interesting part with this is that you can now, and I apologize, I was centered in. You can now search this via map. And the interesting part is that you can go in. So here.
Oh, they've nicely marked good flying spots there.
Right. So this is Palo Verde nuclear power plant right here. One of the largest nuclear power plants in the country, right outside where I live. And this was an incident that we've covered on here before, where the power plant security advised 5 to 6 UAS with red and white flashing lights were orbiting the power plant and water reservoir areas at approximately 200 feet. UAS possibly have spotlights attached. UAS were over the plant for over an hour. It's a long flight. So you can go in here and pull up the information just by clicking on the little dots and reading what's going on in your area.
So these are just claims, right? They're not like
they
verified.
are. They're not all substantiated. So as we know from the past through one of our friends, Freedom of Information Act, these are all just incident reports that have been submitted by various different entities, organizations, pilots, that kind of thing across the country.
What was that?
Very few of these have been actually verified as actual incidents or anything like that.
Yeah,
I think last count, it was like, 14 or 17?
I think based on a document that I can't talk about, I think it mentioned something like 6.
Oh, okay. So, very few. So this is 10,000 out of 10,000 let's say on the long shot 10, verified accounts. So
And you have
it's
the
an
link to
interesting
that?
tool. I do. Let me pop that in there. I apologize. Shush, we're hunting. So definitely an interesting kind of tool. So they do state in here that not all 10,000 have been added in terms of being attached to a finite point on the map due to spelling mistakes, typos, all that kind of stuff. Here's the tool. I'm going to link the full tool here. And guess what is going on? Well, you can click the link in the thing for the full tool because it's not loading at the moment. Oh, there it is. Hi. Right there. So interesting if you want to explore some of the reported incidents in your area or anywhere else. It covers Hawaii and Alaska as well. So there you go. Really quickly, Red Cat has acquired drone startup Teal. Kind of interesting, more power to them. But on the flip side, interesting how they, in their news release, that they have kind of categorized these companies that they have acquired in the past. So you got Skypersonic, a remote inspection company, Dronebox, a cloud-based flight intelligence platform, Fat Shark, a drone imaging and communication company.
That's stretching
Kind of
it a
interesting.
bit.
A little bit. And Rotorite, a lifestyle operation focused on the consumer segment. Lifestyle. Okay.
A lot of marketing speak in there.
Yeah, for sure. So more power to them. Hopefully that turns into something well for them. This was interesting as well. We have a man accused of shooting down a sheriff's office drone. So it looks like the sheriff's office was flying around a drone to investigate a burglary and deploy the drone to surrounding lots. They say this young man walked out and used a rifle to shoot down the drone because he thought it was harassing him. So, funny that now people who are retaliating against drones are now making the news as opposed to the drones themselves. So, and the interesting part in this article that I will appreciate, airspace is considered to be a public thoroughfare, just like street and individuals have the right to fly drones around in airspace so long as they're not conducting surveillance or violating someone's reasonable expectation of privacy. So good to see that we've got some positive kind of portrayal of drones as opposed to saying, oh, drones are spying on people, rah, 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 that we usually see in articles like this.
Well, let's see if they prosecute him, because it's illegal to shoot an aircraft at an aircraft, and we are considered aircraft. So the only way the message is going to get is if we see prosecution.
Yeah. So I would imagine, since this was a police or a sheriff's office drone, sheriff officer's drone that was in use for official purposes, you'll probably see some prosecution on this. I can't speak for them, but obviously that's,
well, I'm hoping on the federal side.
Well, again, that they may deem it, well, you're handling it, so we don't need to. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah. Let's see. Last but not least, and I will kind of wrap this up. I apologize if somebody else would like to speak. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of time. Amazon's Prime Air program hopes to deliver packages to its many customers fast. This comes from Drone DJ, but just don't expect it anytime soon. Business Insider reports internal conflict, high turnover, and launch delays have put the drone delivery program in upheaval. The publication reports that a meeting in March, Amazon executives were on spot to answer tough employee questions about the state of the program. Longtimers accuse new hires from the aerospace industry of moving too slowly and they brought up the division's high turnover rate of 20%. I've also read that other divisions in Amazon's organizations do not even come close to this 20%. I think one is at like 15%, and the other is like 10 for the main company of Amazon. One questioner remarked that in the last year, all 4 of the individuals on his leadership chain were replaced by Boeing expats. What are we doing to preserve Amazon's unique culture and principles within Prime Air while building out our organization with established industry leaders? So it says,
it'd be interesting to watch that Google Wing is creating a software platform that Amazon customers could, or people selling on Amazon could pick up. So if this doesn't bear fruit, Google Wing is, and the Google Wing application supports everything from flight authorization and flight planning to flight management to ordering and supplying and delivery. So they really are thinking about this in a complete ecosystem and could be a real competitor for Amazon.
Yep. So it goes on to say Prime Air has struggled to meet its goals, possibly because of these internal conflicts and because of regulatory obstacles. It's apparently aiming for a soft launch in the third quarter of 2022. So we'll see what happens with that. But we knew from the beginning that, drone delivery was going to have its issues. So, I'm not holding my breath. We'll see what happens. With that, I'm going to release my hold on this show and give it to Dave. You got anything for us?
Just along the lines of what Dan was saying, we're working hard and we can't talk about it. So we are spending a lot of time on this ARC BVLOS. It's hours and hours and hours every week. And we're, like I say, we'll hope to be able to publish the report when it is completed, and it's 6 months from start, so November-ish is the target date. And go ahead, Dan.
Anything going on with DAC tasking groups?
Yeah, no, I was gonna jump to that. I don't think they've started yet. There's tasking group 11 and 12, one relating to a white paper that the FAA wrote on, which should be interesting and useful, and the other how to help and get aviation and drone ideas into K through 12 curricula. And so Alex and I are signed up to one or both of those, and I need to follow up with the leaders. I believe we were both accepted to be on them, and so we have to just follow up.
Okay, and I haven't missed anything, right? We have not been given access to the said white paper yet. Is that true?
That's correct. That is correct. I need to find. It just occurred as I was sitting here. It occurred to me that I did get permission through the that we should be getting that, but we don't have it yet.
Right. Yeah, we agree, XJet. We don't like the way this works, but we're playing their game right now.
Right. Good government is transparent government. We agree.
All right, so the ARC is dealing, just to kind of recap, the ARC is dealing with beyond visual line of sight, and all of the ins and outs regarding that. So again, that is under information embargo for the time being. So, and hopefully once that's done, like Dave was saying, we'll publish, they'll be able to publish the report on that, and so you can kind of see what's going on within that. It is made up of approximately 90 different organizations and companies. But beyond that, not a lot we can discuss on that. So, all right, Alex, you got anything for us, or?
IO's coming around the corner soon, about a month away. Think they're still looking for some more volunteers if you're interested. Otherwise, it's going to be a great event. They're putting some effort into the freestyle track that's going to be there as well.
Tell us
Then
about
we
what is IO for all of us who've never heard of it before. I've heard of it
So
before.
So IO is the Multi-GP International Open, and it's the biggest FPV event that goes on annually. So it's supposed to be annually. That kind of got messed up with COVID and all, but
It's a really big party that a lot of well-known FPV people go to and occasionally fly, but sometimes party all night long.
Well, no, there's races, and you get to see some of the best pilots race, and you can race them as well. So
Okay.
they have tracks for rookies all the way up to experts. They're gonna have team racing. I can't remember if they're doing mega racing. There's gonna be the Tiny Whoop tent, which I hear is always fun, led by Jesse Perkins, and so
Mr. Tiny Whoop.
Yes, Mr. Tiny Whoop.
All right. We also have, and again, we're not sponsors. We're not, not paid promo. We don't get any kickbacks, but West Coast Throwdown is also coming up August 19th through the 22nd. It's going to be in Oregon. What's that?
I was just saying that's like the next day after IO. Because IO is the 11th to the 15th.
So you just keep the party going.
Catch a plane, right? It's the after party for IO, right?
Yeah.
So looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Lots of camping and whatnot. So 4 days freestyle racing, X class, and apparently many FPV shenanigans. So there you go. So if you're looking to get out and fly with some great people, IO, West Coast Throwdown, both recommended events. So just to kind of let you know what's going on around the world here.
One other thing that happened, didn't they release some very redacted documents related to Gatwick? I don't know if anybody has a summary of that.
I haven't seen those.
I think I saw something related to that recently.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I haven't heard that either.
I heard the thing about a different airport.
Yes, the police's biggest concern was the lack of catering. Oh, jeez.
Thank you, Bruce.
Oh, goodness.
What other airport were you thinking of, Alex? Do you know?
It started with an H.
Heathrow?
Started with an H.
Heathrow?
I think it's different. I think it's a different airport that starts with an H. That's why I don't remember.
Those are the two airports I know in the UK.
Rhymes with? What? Do you have a country?
I don't remember how it ended. I just remember it started with H.
He fell asleep during the first part.
All right.
I was just scrolling through and I saw airport and I saw H and then I kept scrolling.
Oh, jeez. Details for details.
It wasn't as attention grabbing for me.
All right.
They're like, another false report.
Dan, you got anything to kind of close this out?
No,
bud?
I think I posted the link to the very redacted report, but otherwise I don't think I've got anything else.
All right. So any questions, comments, concerns from
what does the community have
attendees?
For us?
Yeah.
Try to get us to say something we're not allowed to say about the ARC.
No. We don't need the bad. We don't need the bad press.
All right. So
that's good.
With that, guys, thanks for joining us this evening. Again, we'll get those comments out fairly quickly, so y'all can respond on the advisory circular for recreational. And we'll probably drop those in Discord here. We'll drop them on Facebook. We'll drop them on our website. So you'll have multiple avenues through which to grab those and utilize those. So be patient with us, and we'll get those out to you. But with that, no, I don't. No, Bruce, just no. We're not doing OnlyFans. All right, with that, have a great night, and get out there and fly. It's summer. Hopefully when there's no storms or ridiculous heat, you guys can get out and have some fun. So with that, have a great night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.